Greetings viewers, Eric the Car Guy back again with episode 3 of the final assembly of the Fairmont project. A couple of videos happened in between episode 2 and this video that I separated out because I felt they could stand on their own. And those videos were squaring a K-member, Fox body suspension where I installed the front suspension parts. And there's also a video where I did the engine dress up, so I changed a bunch of things on the engine, power steering rack installation. And this was actually the first video where I started shooting myself. And another fun fact about this video is at the time, or not too long ago, I was looking for some help with editing with these videos. And I didn't do the original edit to this. In fact, I did go back and make some changes and make this into my own edit. But if you notice that it's a little bit different, well, that's not me. In this episode, we're going to cover, well, honestly, I don't remember everything, but there's some stuff with the K-member and some other things. And well, I've just tried to keep it interesting and pack it all down to just the fun bits. But instead of me sitting here talking about it, why don't we get to the action already in progress? So take it away, Eric, with the goatee. So here's the engine once again. The only thing I did off camera was I installed the oil pressure sending unit, so that's ready to go. But outside of that, you've pretty much seen the rest. One other thing that I did, I had these spacers on here incorrect, so I switched them. So the short one needed to go up front and the long one was in back. I have the wrap for the rest of this pipe, so I want to get that. I need to move this exhaust clamp here around. It comes into contact with this drain hose. I want to correct that before I put it back in the car. For the most part, it's complete though. In here, I have the sector shaft for the steering that I plan to install and finish installing the steering rack and have that done once and for all. Something else I'd like to do, the steering, it needs to be limited. It goes too far one side or the other. Last time I welded steering stops to the lower control arms. This time I've discovered that all you need to do is put little plastic C-clips on the inside of the power steering rack and that can limit its travel. We'll likely cover that today as well. I think I'll start by moving this clamp. Almost looks like there might have been a small exhaust leak there. See the soot and how the pipe doesn't quite line up? Maybe I can correct that. Either way, we still need to move this clamp. I don't know if moving this around with this facing out this way would be the way to go, or taking the clamp off entirely, flipping it around. Looking at it, that might be the best option. Trying to keep mindful of things like serviceability. Just trying to make sure that the pipes are mated up. Yeah, it doesn't look like this is going to come in contact again. And it looks like it'll still be serviceable, which is precisely the goal. That's what I was looking for. Part of me is looking at this, thinking that I might want to just shorten this ever so slightly, because it looks like it bends out and then goes down. I'd like this to just be a straight shot down into the oil pan. All right, I don't think that's going to make contact anymore. Now the question is, do I shorten it up here or shorten it down there? I'm thinking shorten it up here since it's easier. I don't like how this oil return is like jammed right up next to the turbo. Guess there's really no way around that though. So if this was just that much shorter, I think it would be a better fit. Looks like I'm gonna have to modify my cover also. That means I'll have to trim these up. Yeah, that seems better. So I'm gonna cut it right down here. I can always cut off more if I need to, but. So before it was kind of bowed out right here, but now as you can see, it's like a straight shot down. The easier it is for this oil to drain, the better. That's why we spent the time clocking the turbo and everything. Silicone to the rescue. I know somebody's gonna yell at me for white plastic zip ties. Go ahead, yell at me. For me, it doesn't take that same awkward bend. It seems to be just the right length now. And as a result, a better fit. And hopefully, better drainage to go along with that. Now, while I was over here, I noticed something that I had almost forgotten about, and that was these washers that I said I was going to replace. Well, I have those washers. Why not get that done now? Like I said, I got some other ones just like the other side. That's job done. I've pulled the oil filter up a little farther out of the way. But this is an issue that's been kind of ongoing. This drain plug leaks. You might even be able to see the oil that's there. It might just be the crush washer. I'm not exactly sure what it is. There's 2 sumps on this. There's another one back here, but there's another one for this front section. So I'm gonna see what I can do to try to repair this leak. I'm gonna pull this drain plug out, see if I've got a crush washer that would be applicable, to see if I can address it so that it's no longer dripping everywhere. All right, I've got a drain pan underneath. It's gonna pop this off. If I need to top off the oil, it's not that big a deal. I have some. I'm running 20 W50 in this. It doesn't feel stripped. It may just be the crush washer that needs to be replaced. Yeah, that crush washer is pretty much done, so I'm just gonna stick you back in there for now. So check out this crush washer. It certainly ain't doing great. I think just replacing this should go a long way towards fixing this oil leak. All right, I found one what I believe to be the appropriate size. Gonna give it a try. We'll have to look at that when we come in tomorrow morning, see if it's still dry. Now I want to wrap the rest of this exhaust. This part is particularly important because this is the stuff that comes close to the power steering rack. So I definitely want to keep heat off of that stuff. Once again, got a little bit of what appears to be leakage right here. Kind of a substantial amount. I'm gonna check to see if those fasteners are tight. Hopefully that stops some of that leakage. Might just be something I'm gonna have to live with, but leakage here is pressure that's not going up to the turbo, which makes it less efficient. Not to mention it's an exhaust leak. Now there's only gonna be one little hiccup, and that's this little bung here that is probably for an O2 sensor. Outside of that, it should be pretty straightforward. Now I debated on whether or not I should be covering up this flex pipe, and I am. It just doesn't make sense to like start here and just leave this piece open. So I'm gonna do the whole thing. This is fabric after all, so it won't compromise this flex joint. At least I don't believe it will. Given that this is a straight shot and I have plenty of room in here, I'm just gonna go right off the roll. And just like before, there's a stitch side and a regular side. The stitch side I'm gonna face towards the inside here and then wrap that way. Folks, looks like it. Nice. One wrapped exhaust pipe. Now I've got the engine pretty well dealt with. I'm gonna set that aside for now. Turn my attention to the engine compartment, starting with that steering shaft. Here's the steering shaft. It's special in that it can change length a bit. First thing I need to do is remove this through bolt, because that's kind of what holds it in place and it won't go down on there without it. I've already taken the wheels and put them straight ahead in what I believe to be as straight ahead a position as possible. Therefore the steering wheel will be somewhat centered. I don't need to worry about damaging any electrical connections or anything like that. In my steering column, I don't even have a horn to it, so I can spin the steering wheel around and around. But if you have a later model, especially with like an airbag or something, and the horn that's in the center of the steering wheel, if you go to put one of these on, make sure that that steering wheel doesn't spin as you're putting this on there, because that could put the steering wheel out of position and you could damage the electrical connection or the clock spring inside the steering wheel if you're not careful. I left the through bolt for the upper part of the column in place that I'll remove now. Now they said in the instructions that you could paint this, but they wanted you to mask certain portions of it. I'm not choosing to paint it, but if you do, make sure you mask this part off, because if you don't, what could happen is this will be very difficult to insert up into the vehicle here. Hopefully this guy will slide down into place. I left the steering rack loose to make installation of this easier. It's just a little WD-40. Yeah, that through bolt was a real pain. Now that the back is connected and I'm fairly certain the wheels are still pointed straight ahead, try to connect this piece, and I'm short, really short. I think I found my solution. Inside the column, it's collapsible also, so I can pull the column out a little bit. There we are. And that did pull out from the car quite a bit. And here's the steering shaft. So I just have to make sure that I line up. There's a groove in that rack that's got to line up. You don't want it to come all the way through so that it interferes with this U-joint. You just need to make sure that the bolt gets into that groove. All right, Georgia, I think I've got it. I'll snug that up now. You don't need to kill it. It should hold just fine. So like this steering rack's going in for the last time. K-member is also in there. All right, I want to make sure that my fasteners are pointed straight up and down, or the bushings are straight up and down, then that they get lined up correctly in the back there. I'm just going to snug them up and then I'll torque them to spec, which is going to be 40 foot-pounds if I'm not mistaken. I put this cross brace in here temporarily just to keep an eye on where it was. I have to go get a socket, but I'm going to take it out because when I drop the engine back in, I don't want this in here because it will interfere. All right, at this point, my front suspension is installed. One more thing I want to do with the steering before I move forward is I want to install steering stops inside the steering rack itself. It's actually a pretty simple procedure, especially with everything out of the way like it is now. Now that the rack is bolted down, there's no better time to do that. And then also make sure that I have the clearance that I'm hoping for after installing those steering stops. So let's do that now. These are my new steering stops. So they're just little plastic rings that will go on the inner part of the power steering rack and limit its travel from one direction to the other. Right, I'm just gonna go by the fact that all these are this same part number, this 80, 804, 842. So I'm gonna assume that means they're all the same. In order to install these, I'm gonna have to cut this. This is just a plastic zip tie on both sides. Now I don't have one that thick to replace it. I don't think that's gonna matter. There's a lip on the inside of here that should cover it, but I need to cut both of those and then move the inner rack boots so that I can access the rack to install those stops. All right, let's move the rack out on that side. I don't see any stops on it right now. Sometimes they will already be installed. These are simple. I just slide it up onto here and it'll limit the travel. It won't allow it to go any farther. Yep. See how hard that was? I'm gonna just take this out altogether. It's just an equalization tube between the two boots on both sides. I just need to make sure that it gets back up in there. That's interesting. That side has all kinds of goo and lubricant. This side has nothing. All right. Now that they're installed, let's check the steering wheel side to side and see if that's going to be enough. If not, we'll stack another one in there. So far on this side, it's not hitting that brake line anymore, but it's just missing it. And I could probably bend that brake line up out of the way. It might just require a little bit of bending of the bracket. As far as this side, this brake line looks fine. I'm debating, but I think I'm gonna leave it as is, just with these stops in place. I'm gonna pop that wheel off and see if I can get that to fit a little better. Let's put the wheel back on. That looks way better to me. Can't forget about our equalizing tube. I don't really think it matters what side it goes into, so long as you remember to install it. I am a little worried when I put the engine in, if it's going to come in contact with this. The exhaust pipe comes down right here. We'll see if it's a problem. Yes, I am using smaller zip ties. I don't think it'll matter much, but either way, even if these aren't adequate, it's not like they're going to be difficult to change. Now that I have, well, the engine and the steering and everything pretty much covered, I want to put the engine and transmission back in because I want to do a couple of things. I want to reroute the cold side of the turbo to the intercooler. As many of you pointed out, it going all the way from one side to the other doesn't make much sense. Also laying it up against the hot exhaust pipe. I don't have to worry about that. I'm not running a fuel injected engine. I'm running a carbureted engine, so I can point the carburetor hat where I want it to. Therefore, I'm going to need to get the engine in there to try and sort all that plumbing out so that I can figure out what parts I need. To that end, I'm also going to cut a hole in the side of this inner fender so that I can run the air filter outside the engine compartment. I'm doing that because it interfered with the upper radiator hose, the turbo did anyway. So it seems like the easiest way to deal with that is to reroute the inlet for the turbo out inside this fender over here. This is what I'm talking about. So I've marked where I'm going to put the hole there. I'm going to take what used to be the outlet of the cold side turbo coming in here, and I'm going to transfer that over to here. All I've got to do is move the horn. I believe that's all I'm going to have to do is move the horn and then try to mirror this hole on this side. Hi, I'm Mr. Happy. I used to live here. Oh, that is beautiful. It's perfect. I haven't got the filter to go on this yet, but I'm totally confident that this will work. I'll cut this to length. All it's got to do is pass through there a little bit. First, I've got to remove the horn. So that's right where we want to be. That's got to make it back on the car at some point. Well, for now, I'm going to go put it with a pile of parts. Now, I need to figure out where this hole needs to be, but I'm kind of debating on whether or not I should do this just yet. It might be better to get the intercooler and everything mounted and run the pipe that I plan to hopefully bring to this area. I had intentions on painting the brackets before I installed them on the car again for the intercooler. I guess the next step is to paint those brackets for the intercooler and get ready to install the engine and the intercooler in the car. Not an ideal situation painting this stuff inside, but it's raining right now and it's cold. I'll let that set up for a minute and then be back for another coat. So even though I've just primed it and it's not really a thick coat of primer, this coat of paint / primer should do the trick. So while I wait for the paint to dry, there was some metal left over from when I put the new transmission crossmember in here, from the old transmission crossmember that I'm grinding down, and I'm going to paint that surface as well. These are now all flush. So that stuff's gone away, it's all smooth, where everything attaches, so I can paint it tonight, come back in the morning, bolt everything back together. We're good. Well, I hope you enjoyed episode 3 of the final assembly of the Ford Fairmont. I'm going to be doing episodes from here on in as far as the assembly of this car, all the way up to the point where it fires up for the first time. After that, we'll figure something else out. What's kind of neat about, introing these a year after I actually shot the video is that there have been a lot of things that have changed since the episode that you just saw, and you will see some of those changes along the way. One of those things that I'll let you in on now is I did end up painting that sector shaft. It got kind of rusty, so if you do have one of those and you're installing one of those, you probably do want to paint it if you want to prevent it from rusting. Other than that, it's going to get some surface rust on there. It's going to look kind of but I painted mine. Looks wicked good now. I'll put links in the description to previous videos, some of those videos that I mentioned that happened between episode 2 and 3 to try to keep you up to speed. But from here on out, things should move a little bit more smoothly. I'm taking the reins, and well, I'm going to try to kick these videos out for you to keep you Fairmont lovers happy, and know that at the end of all this, this car ends up in Hot Rod magazine, which is freaking awesome. Thank you, Hot Rod. Anyway, as I said, I'll put links in the description to that stuff. If you have automotive questions, I ask that you head to EricTheCarGuy.com. That will also be linked in the description. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification so that you're notified when I post new videos. That's really helpful to me. Appreciate it. Be safe, have fun, stay dirty. I will see you next time. Thanks again.